300 million years ago, the Carboniferous period, Earth's atmosphere held a secret that would birth monsters. Dragonflies the size of hawks, millipedes longer than your arm, insects that could look you in the eye. This shouldn't be possible. Insects can't grow that large. Their bodies won't allow it. And yet, they did. This is Meganeura, the largest insect ever to fly. Wingspan of 28 inches, that's 70 centimeters. A predator that ruled ancient skies. Today, the biggest dragonfly barely reaches 5 inches across, 12 centimeters. Why were Carboniferous insects 5 times larger? The answer lies in something invisible. Something we breathe every day. Something that was fundamentally different back then. To understand why giants walked the earth, we need to understand how insects breathe, and why size became their prison. Modern insects don't have lungs, no diaphragm, no blood that carries oxygen like ours does. Instead, they breathe through spiracles, tiny holes along their body. Air flows directly to their tissues through tubes called trachea. It's passive diffusion, no pumping, no active transport, just concentration gradients doing the work. This system is efficient, simple, perfect for small bodies, but it has a hard limit. The larger an insect grows, the longer those tracheal tubes become. Air must travel farther to reach inner tissues. Beyond a certain size, oxygen can't diffuse fast enough. The insect suffocates from the inside out. In today's atmosphere, 21% oxygen, that limit is strict. Dragonflies max out around 5 inches, 12 to 13 centimeters. But 300 million years ago, Earth's air was different. Fundamentally, chemically different. The Carboniferous period, named for the massive coal deposits it created. An age of endless swamp forests. Trees evolved bark and lignin, substances that resist decay. Dead trees piled up faster than bacteria could break them down. All that dead plant matter locked away carbon, removed CO2 from the air, and flooded the atmosphere with oxygen. Oxygen levels soared. Not 21% like today. Estimates suggest 31% to 35%, nearly twice the partial pressure. At sea level, breathing Carboniferous air would feel like being at high altitude today, but richer, intoxicating. For insects, this was revolutionary. More oxygen meant diffusion could work across longer distances. Suddenly, the size limit vanished. Bodies could grow. Exoskeletons could support more mass. And so they did. Dragonflies became monsters. Millipedes stretched to 8 feet long, over 2 meters of armored segments. Meganeura emerged. The apex aerial predator of its time, wings spanning 28 inches, 70 centimeters of hunting machine. But there's more to the story. Oxygen wasn't the only factor. Carboniferous Earth had another advantage. Predators, specifically the lack of them. Birds didn't exist yet. Pterosaurs were still 80 million years in the future. The skies were empty, open, waiting for something to claim them. And Meganeura did. Evolution doesn't plan ahead. It responds to opportunity. High oxygen removed the constraint. Empty skies removed the competition. Together, these forces drove gigantism. Insects grew because they could, and because nothing stopped them. For 60 million years, giants ruled. The Carboniferous was their golden age. But nothing lasts forever. The climate began to shift. The endless swamps dried up. Oxygen levels started to fall. And with them, the giants began to shrink, or disappear entirely. The age of insect monsters was ending. But before it did, Meganeura reached its peak. Let's examine this creature, understand what made it so perfectly adapted. Meganeura monyi. That's the full scientific name. Discovered in the 1880s, France, from Carboniferous fossil beds. The fossils are stunning. Wing impressions so detailed you can count individual veins. A snapshot of ancient predation frozen in stone. Wingspan of 28 inches, 70 centimeters. But here's what's strange. The body itself was relatively light. Modern dragonflies are power-to-weight marvels. Meganeura took this further. Hollow structures, thin exoskeleton, built for flight. The wings were reinforced with a network of veins. Cross-bracing that's eerily similar to modern aircraft wing design. Engineers studied these fossils, found that Meganeura's wing structure is nearly optimal for its size and weight. 300 million years of evolution produced something we'd design with computers today. Nature got there first. But flight alone doesn't make you a predator. Meganeura needed weapons, and it had them. The head was dominated by compound eyes, massive, wrapping around the skull, thousands of individual lenses. Modern dragonflies have near 360-degree vision, can track multiple targets simultaneously. Meganeura likely had the same. Visual processing in insects is fast, nearly instantaneous, perfect for hunting on the wing at high speed. The mandibles were robust, serrated edges, designed to slice through the exoskeletons of other insects. Meganeura didn't scavenge, it hunted, actively pursued prey through the humid carboniferous air. Stomach contents from related fossils show fragments of other insects, smaller dragonflies, mayflies, anything it could catch. But here's where it gets truly bizarre. Flight muscles in insects work differently than in vertebrates. Insect flight muscles don't attach directly to wings. They deform the thorax. The thorax deforms the wings. It's indirect, mechanical advantage through leverage. Allows for wing beat frequencies impossible with direct attachment. Modern dragonflies beat their wings 30 times per second. Some smaller species exceed 200 beats per second. Meganeura was larger, heavier, likely beat its wings slower, but each stroke moved massive air volume. Flight mechanics scale with size. Larger wings mean more lift per stroke, but also more energy required. The metabolic rate must have been intense, burning through energy to keep that body airborne, hunting constantly. And here's the thing about high oxygen environments. Metabolism runs hotter. Reactions happen fast. Carboniferous insects lived in overdrive. More oxygen meant more energy available. More energy meant more activity. Meganeura wasn't just large, it was likely fast, aggressive, a high-performance predator in a high-performance world. But there's a darker side to this story, one that scientists only recently understood. High oxygen is toxic. In modern experiments, prolonged exposure to 30% plus oxygen causes cellular damage. Free radicals increase. Oxidative stress builds up. DNA gets damaged. Proteins denature. So how did carboniferous life survive? How did they avoid oxygen poisoning? The answer is still unclear. Possibly enhanced antioxidant systems. Possibly cellular mechanisms we haven't identified yet. What we do know, these creatures were adapted to conditions that would kill modern insects within days. Meganeura's tissues were built for a different world. A world where the rules of biochemistry were slightly rewritten. And it wasn't just dragonflies. The entire ecosystem was supersized. Meganeura was just the most dramatic example. Arthropleura, a millipede that reached 8.5 feet long. That's 2.6 meters, longer than most humans are tall. It likely fed on decaying plant matter. But with that size, with those armored segments, it feared nothing. Pulmonoscorpius, a scorpion measuring 28 inches long, 70 centimeters, venomous, heavily armored. The entire food web was scaled up. Prey were larger. Predators were larger. Everything pushed to extremes. And at the top of the aerial food chain sat Meganeura, wings reflecting the humid light, compound eyes scanning for movement. But something else lurked in this ecosystem, something that would eventually change everything. Vertebrates were evolving. Early amphibians crawled through the swamps. Some were beginning to develop better locomotion. Proto-reptiles appeared, the ancestors of dinosaurs. Still small, still slow, but evolving, adapting, waiting. For now, Meganeura reigned. But the clock was ticking. The atmospheric oxygen that made giants possible was starting to fall. The great drying began. Swamp forests retreated. Dead plant matter stopped accumulating at the same rate. Bacteria evolved lignin-decomposing enzymes. Fungi developed the same capability. Carbon that once stayed locked began returning to the cycle. Oxygen levels started dropping, slowly at first, then faster. By the Permian period, they'd fallen closer to modern levels, and the giants began to shrink, or die out entirely. Meganeura disappeared from the fossil record. The last specimens date to around 250 million years ago, right before the Permian-Triassic extinction event. That extinction killed 90% of all species, the worst in Earth's history. Meganeura didn't survive it. But the question remains, even if oxygen hadn't dropped, could giants have survived the rise of vertebrate predators? Here's the most unsettling part, the part that changes how we see the entire story. Meganeura wasn't just large, it was the maximum possible size for its body plan, the absolute limit. Engineers ran calculations, modeled the stress on exoskeletons at different sizes, found a hard ceiling. Beyond 28-inch wingspan, roughly 70 centimeters, the exoskeleton can't support the flight muscles needed. Even in high oxygen, even without predators, there's a fundamental biomechanical limit. Meganeura reached it, touched the ceiling of what insect architecture allows, then stayed there for millions of years. It wasn't evolving towards something larger, it had reached the end, the final form. This is convergent evolution's endpoint. When physics says no further, biology stops pushing. Modern dragonflies face the same laws, just with less oxygen to work with. The limit is lower now. But here's what's truly fascinating. What keeps scientists up at night with questions? If we raised modern insects in high oxygen chambers, would they grow larger? The experiments have been done. With fruit flies, with beetles, with dragonflies. And yes, they do grow larger. Not immediately, but over generations. Natural selection favoring size when oxygen allows. In one study, dragonflies raised in 31% oxygen for multiple generations reached 15% larger body size. The potential is still there, locked in the genome, waiting for the environmental trigger. Evolution doesn't forget. It just shelves adaptations when they're no longer useful. Meganeura's descendants carry the genetic echoes of gigantism, suppressed by atmospheric chemistry. Change the air, and you change the possible. The same rules that made ancient monsters could make new ones. But there's a catch. Modern ecosystems wouldn't tolerate it. Predators exist now. Birds, bats, even small mammals hunt dragonflies. A supersized insect would be slower, more visible, easier prey. Meganeura had empty skies. Modern dragonflies don't. Even with oxygen, they'd be hunted to extinction. The window for insect giants closed permanently. Not just because oxygen dropped, but because the world changed. So what does this tell us about life itself, about the rules that govern what's possible? Size isn't destiny. It's negotiation between physics, chemistry, and ecology. Change any variable and everything shifts. The Carboniferous giants prove that Earth's current state isn't special. It's just current. Atmospheric composition shapes body plans. Oxygen availability determines maximum size for diffusion-based breathers. If Earth's oxygen rose again, if we somehow returned to Carboniferous levels, insects would respond. Not overnight, not in years, but over thousands of generations, natural selection would favor size again. The blueprints for gigantism exist, they're just switched off. Metabolically expensive in low oxygen conditions. This has implications beyond Earth. When we search for life on other planets, we think in Earth terms. But what if exoplanet atmospheres differ? What if oxygen levels are higher or lower? Life would optimize for those conditions. Body plans would look alien, but they'd still follow physical laws. Meganeura teaches us that life is flexible, adaptable, constrained by physics, but creative within those constraints. The fossil record is full of experiments. Most failed. Some succeeded for millions of years. Then, conditions changed. Nothing is permanent. Not atmospheric composition, not ecological dominance, not even the rules of what's possible. Today's dragonflies are smaller, but they're survivors. They've persisted through climate shifts, extinction events, and atmospheric changes. Meganeura flew through skies we can barely imagine, hunted in air that would poison us, reached sizes impossible today. And then it vanished. Not because it was weak, but because the world stopped supporting its existence. Evolution doesn't promise forever. It only promises right now, and right now is always temporary.